Hello and welcome to my channel. I am ZodiacBandit, and today I'm going to do something a little different. Now, it's not totally different, but it is still different from what I've done as of late, and that is I want to talk about my favorite moments from each of the campaigns so far. So, Campaign 1, 2, and eventually I'll talk about stuff from Campaign 3, but we're a little early on in Campaign 3 to really talk about it. This was spurred on by FCG's recent lashing out against the party, and it immediately became one of my favorite moments in all of Campaign 3 so far. So I want to talk about each campaign and my favorite moments for each character. I'm not just going to give 3 of my favorite, moments. I'm going to give a favorite moment for every character that we've got in each campaign. So we're going to be starting with Campaign 1 today. So that is Vox Machina, the core 7 of Vox Machina. I know a lot of people will probably want me to include Terry. You know what? I'm going to include Terry. Screw it. We're going to do all 8 members of Vox Machina because there's only 8. There's only 8. Let's get into the list. Not list. You know what I mean. So there's no order in particular for this list, so I'm going to be starting with Pike. Probably just because she had like the least amount of moments in my opinion, which is unfortunate, but it's because of fucking Blind Spot. But anyway, my favorite moment from Pike in all of Campaign 1 was her arrival in the battlefield at Whitestone when she arrives and completely turns the tide and helps them move forward because they were on the back foot at this point. And when she arrived, it was the first time we ever saw her astral projection. She was able to heal up the party. She was able to really come in clutch and save the day, turn undead and all that beautiful stuff. It was a great moment. Not to mention, this moment got extra reinforcement from the Legend of Vox Machina series, where they made her look so goddamn epic when she showed up and gave everyone a power up. I don't remember if that happens in the actual thing or not, but it was still really epic. This moment was nice for her because she hadn't been there a whole lot, which is very unfortunate for a player who really enjoys D&D to not be able to play because of something on the exterior affecting that. So for her to get this epic moment that was really cool, really helpful, was really nice for her because, like I said, she didn't have all that much screen time and, room to do really cool things like the other players got to do. So, really nice moment and very fitting of a cleric to come in, save the day, heal up the party, make sure that they're able to continue the fight and move forward. And it's just an awesome moment. I really enjoyed it. It was a good moment for Pike. So, it's my number 1 moment for her in Campaign 1. Next on my list, or whatever this is Kelith's best moment, favorite moment for me, and that is her jumping off the cliff and proclaiming that we're basically gods, and turning into a goldfish and splatting on the bottom, because they're not gods quite yet, and she's not immortal quite yet at this time. So yeah, that's my favorite moment from her. This moment's hilarious. It followed the battle, or ruse, from the Trickfoot family, and she had to go down and get a gem or a diamond, I believe, as payment for all the crap that they just went through. And she decided to jump off because turning into a bird or an elemental would be too hard, and she's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna swan dive as a goldfish into the water, it'll be fine. Splat. And then everyone in the party got the alarm to go off from the necklaces that they had, I think, very recently had been given from Terry, I believe. I don't know if that's necessarily true. But they then go down and find her. Vex goes down and finds her after the alarm goes off and is terrified. And luckily they had their good friend Pike there to heal again. Very, very bad situation for good old Kelith. But it made a moment that is going to live on forever. I mean, Kelith, whenever I think of Kelith, that is one of the first moments I think of. It's that, and then right after that I always think of her gliding through the ground as an earth elemental while they're looking for the sword. But before that is always, always going to be the goddamn "we're basically gods" quote. And yeah, it's going to live on in infamy forever, in my opinion, as the best moment, as my favorite moment for Kelith of the Arashari. So next is going to be Vex's favorite moment, or my favorite moment of Vex, and that is when she took the arrow that she could see through her Miracle Eye arrow, or I believe it was either the arrow that did it or her bow that allowed her to see through the arrow. But then she shot it through the black orb above the ziggurat that was created by Delilah Briarwood, and was able to see through into the Shadowfell with this, because anything that got too close magically to the ziggurat would just stop working. And so no one, over the time that it was created, the ziggurat, till after the 1 year time skip, no one figured out this little black orb. So she decided to shoot through it, and after a certain radius of being away from this black orb on the other side, she was able to see the Shadowfell and what Vecna was doing on that side. And it was only something she could do. Otherwise, it would have been a total surprise when Vecna and his cronies showed up with Delilah and all of them, and it would have been terrible. It would have been way worse for them if they didn't have a little bit of information before, going into all of the stuff that they did until Scanlon showed up. So, very interesting moment, very, very cool moment for her, and honestly, one of the most inventive moments. It was a very intelligent moment from her, from a character who, if you look at how they portrayed her in The Legend of Vox Machina, is the leader, the plan maker. And for her to have come up with this when none of the wizards or sorcerers or anybody else who was around, she really came out looking like the single smartest person in campaign 1. And it was really cool, really fun for her to get a moment like this. She had a handful of good moments before, mainly when her and Trinket went into the Feywild and they got some sort of boon for Trinket. That was a cool moment for her as well. But to me, this really showed what kind of leader Vex could be, and how smart she was, and how innovative she was. So, very fun moment, very good moment for her. So now I'm going to talk about my favorite Taryon Darrington moment, and my favorite Taryon Darrington moment is kind of a shared moment between him and Pike, and that is when Pike tells him to smarten up and to start getting everyone's names right, and have Dodie draw everyone in various positions and write down the names on them. So instead of calling Vex and Vax little elf boy and girl, he would actually call them their names. And it was a fun moment because this was a true turnaround moment for the character. Beforehand, he was kind of, I don't want to say shitty, but he was kind of shitty. He was calling everybody different names, not necessarily great names like little elf boy and little elf girl. Not necessarily the greatest thing to call some elves, especially half elves, because it's, not nice. But this was a good turnaround for him, because after this point, he did start calling them by their names and gave them a lot more respect as time went on, and truly made Terry go from a character who just felt like a placeholder for a little while until Scanlon come back, and turned him into a true character in my eyes, because someone finally told him off. Other than beating crap out of him for initiation, someone finally told him, hey, you need to start showing some of us respect, because, you need us on the battlefield. And Pike got it to happen, and I really enjoyed that moment. Another good moment for Terry, because I don't feel like I got too much time on this one for him, was when he used the thing he won in the Battle Royale to persuade his father to change the way the Darrington family operated. That was a good moment too. So yeah, 2 moments for him there. A little special for them Terry fans. And for my favorite Vax moment, I'm going with the moment he cut Grog's beard off, or at least half of it, because first of all, it's funny as hell, and it's a little different from the usual Vax edge. And I think this was the first time where the pranks between the two of them really started to go a little over the top, rather than just tripping each other or poking each other. And this is when it's truly started to elevate and become something far worse, and turn into a brutal and not necessarily hate-filled, but definitely became more elevated and more angry toward each other as far as pranks go, until it eventually climaxes with them both pranking Scanlon, but that's a totally different situation. But this moment's great because the pure rage that it gives Travis is perfect, and I'll never forget it. Perfect Vax moment, because he's a rogue, he's sneaky, and it's totally something he would do, because I could see Vax being that much of a dick to cut off the prized beard of Grog. For my favorite Percy moment, I went with Percy with his internal struggle against Orthax to kill Delilah as opposed to letting her live, which is what he initially intended to do, after shooting her arm off, they left the ziggurat only for Percy to hear in his head Orthax tell him to finish what they started, and it also made him aim his gun at both Delilah and his sister Cassandra with an internal struggle until the entity itself came out and began fighting the rest of the party. And it was a, tense moment until eventually he was able to overcome it. And then obviously Cassandra stabbed Delilah and all of this. But it was a great moment because it led to, honestly, one of the funniest moments, one of the most intense moments, and that is Scanlon throwing the gun into the vat of acid. This is all connected, in my opinion. It's all one big moment. And getting rid of that gun turned Percy around from a, obviously being manipulated, vicious, hateful, revenge-filled person to someone else who became less involved about that and wanted there to be more discussion in Whitestone, for there to be a council in Whitestone as opposed to whatever he was probably thinking before. Less about revenge, more about progress. And eventually, this is, in my opinion, the leading moment that toward the end of the game, when he decided to no longer be a destroyer and wanted to create things like a giant clock tower in Whitestone, I firmly believe this moment, which was the kind of the defeat of Orthax in this instance, was a deciding factor in his character to pull a total 180 for virtually the rest of the game. I don't think he ever admits his feelings for Vex. If this happens, I don't think he ever does anything different. I think he goes on to eventually shoot himself with his gun after all this is all done. So, good moment, in my opinion. My favorite moment from him, with there being plenty of favorite moments from him, because he is probably one of my favorite characters in Campaign 1. So, had plenty to choose from, but this to me is like I said, this is the moment I think of when I think of Percy. Him with his internal struggle with Orthax. So, my favorite moment for Percy, right here. My favorite Grog moment is when he finally kills Kevdak. This moment is nuts for a million reasons. First of all, Grog is on his last legs within a Pokeball, the little ball that Vex usually keeps Trinket within. He is now inside it, and she decides to choose him and drops him onto the battlefield while she's flying on her broom right onto Kevdak, splitting him in two. He bisects him, and it was, a fun moment, very exciting moment. And to me, this is one of my favorite moments because Grog got very few really cool moments. He was usually in the background and he was able to, kill off big monsters, but he didn't have any impactful moments for himself throughout this campaign, as he was not that kind of character. He wasn't a character who had a very deep backstory, and this being basically his only backstory that we got to see anyway, is what really defines him, as, in my opinion, him being a brutal warrior who is willing to kill even his own family to protect his true family. He killed his blood he killed his blood to protect the city he's from and to protect his friends, all in the attempt to eventually go and fight Umbrasyl. And this was a great moment, and it leads to one of my favorite animated videos that I've ever seen about Critical Role, which is this exact moment. And I truly do think that this is, if you needed to look at what defines the character of Grog, this is it. This is it. Willing to do damage and taking damage in the process, because he gets knocked out from this. He cuts him in half, his legs break underneath him once he lands, and just goes unconscious. Perfect moment for Grog. Very fitting of who he is. Very much enjoy this moment, and this is the moment that I always think of when it comes to Grog. Best moment for him ever. So at the beginning of this video, I said there is no order for any of this. There is no order, right? That's what I said at the beginning. That was a lie. This is my all-time favorite moment, and it's a Scanlon moment. Obviously, he's the only one left, and that is Scanlon, the God Killer. Scanlon, throughout the entire... Fuck that. Sam, throughout all of Campaign 1, was very jokey, very, I'm just going to make songs and make everyone be happy and entertain them. And in the background all the while, he became a master at his character in Scanlon, and eventually, just an overall master of playing D&D. He became a god in his own right. And this moment will live on forever as a moment where a player truly shows his mettle as a D&D player, as a master of D&D. And that is, he, moves up. They're flying in the air fighting Vecna at this point. He uses his action to move up, and he inspires Grog, because that's all he can do at this point. And then he moves himself within range of Vecna, so that when Vecna goes to cast a spell to be rid of Grog and Pike, fuck you, Vecna, Scanlon is now perfectly positioned for counterspell. It is the best moment of that fight. It is the single best moment in Campaign 1 when Scanlon, when Sam proves he is the Dungeon Master here. He is the guy who is in charge. He's the one who tells the story. He is the person who is making sure Vecna can't do shit. And no one knew why. He eventually had to, when he filled out his I'm out of this level spells and closed the pen, he's like, that's why I got closer, motherfucker. And it was so good, so amazing. Everyone at the table lost their shit. Matt gave him mad respect in this moment. And this, to me, is the moment where I was like, Sam is probably the best player at the table, because goddamn was that one of the most entertaining. It was literally 40 seconds of him saying, nope, fuck you, counterspell, and that's why I got closer, motherfucker. Perfect. And I think the song he sung during it was also very entertaining. So overall, the single best moment in Campaign 1. None of these were in order until this point. This one is number 1 and will always sit as number 1. It is a great moment. Goddamn, Sam as Scanlon was perfect. So there is my favorite moments for each character from Campaign 1. I love talking about Campaign 1 and Campaign 2, which will be coming next week. So yeah, simple as that. Let me know what your favorite moments are from Campaign 1 down below for each character. And if you got multiple, even I said multiple moments for each character at some point, or at least I gave some of them some multiple moments. But yeah, next week, Campaign 2s, and I already know that entire list of my favorite moments from all that. Very easy for me to pinpoint my favorite moments for each character as I look at it. So, yeah, see you guys then. I'm excited to talk about Campaign 2 again. I always love talking about Campaign 2. It's where I got my start with Critical Role. So, very much excited to talk about that. And eventually, down the road, I will be talking about my favorite Campaign 3 moments, and y'all damn well know that FCG telling Chetney to shut the fuck up will be on that list, because it is the best. Everyone was shocked. It was amazing. Can't wait for that. So, see you guys then. Peace.